things are changing. I mean, I like this Bill Gates quote, right? I think it's Bill Gates who says, we overestimate the amount of change that happens in 2 years. We underestimate the amount of change that can happen in 10 years. And there is obviously change coming. Maybe we are overestimating what will happen in 2 years, but things are changing for sure. And
Gowri Subramanian, welcome to the podcast.
thank you, Connor. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks so much for coming in. You're going back to India soon, so I really appreciate you taking the time to do this today. Could we start with Aspire? Aspire Systems, what is it? What do you do? Who the customers are? And kind of, if you could give me a sense for the kind of size and scale of the business too.
Yeah. So basically, we are a global technology services firm. So essentially, what that means is we work with other companies and help them manage their technology landscape. Right. So we do focus on certain sectors, and they are software and tech companies. We work with companies that build and sell software, and we work with banks and financial services. We work with retailers, and we work with insurance companies. So if you think of some large global retailers like Staples, for example, or Macy's, we tend to work with some of those companies and manage and help develop their internal technology landscape. And that also turns out to be customer facing as well, right? So, like e-commerce systems, supply chain systems, store systems for a retailer. For an insurer, it could be about managing some of their claim systems and so on. For bank, it's about managing and implementing their mobile banking, core banking systems, and so on. So essentially, they're a services firm.
And it's I suppose proprietary systems within the companies essentially.
Well, it's two things. One is obviously bespoke proprietary systems that belong to the company, which is custom coded and custom developed for the company. But we also implement systems specific to those industries. So, for example, we're a big partner for Oracle, and we help implement Oracle retail systems. So, when you go into a shop and you swipe your card, you might see a Micros retail POS, right? That's an Oracle product. We help implement that for retailers. So it's not just custom built systems, it's also systems that some partnerships we have for large global product companies, and we help implement those products for our customers. And then we help integrate all the systems so that they seamlessly talk to each other. Obviously, for large global organizations, there are lots of systems and they need to interact very well. And you need to do a lot of integration. There's a lot of data management work that happens. So we enable all of that, and we do all of that as a partner to our customers.
And the size of the organization today, can you kind of give an idea
Yeah,
of that?
so basically we are about globally we are about 4,500 people spread across the globe. In terms of revenues, we are about $200 million in revenues, US dollars in revenues. Now, um, the revenues and people proportion is a little bit off because obviously 70% of our team is offshore, so the billing rates tend not to be as high. But 30% of our team work closely with customers. Now, if you look at our team distribution, at a broad level, it's we kind of grew up out of India, so still a lot of our strength is there. 70% of our team tends to be there, but 30% in global markets like US, UK, here in Ireland, and different countries in Europe. On the revenue side, it's the other way around. 95% of our customers are outside of India. So we don't work too much with Indian customers, though we do that. But a lot of the work that we do is for global customers, and the US is really a big market for us, right? And then so is Europe, UK, Ireland, Netherlands. They're also big markets, but 2/3 of our business is coming from the US.
And how did you end up in Ireland? People will hear your accent and they'll assume, right, that you're not from Dublin. How did you end up here for the time that you've been here?
Yeah, well, there's like really two reasons, right? When COVID came, it gave us the flexibility to live anywhere and to work on things. We do have a global business with like I said, a huge concentration in US and Singapore, here in Europe, and so on. And interestingly, my son had also just grown up and just started going to college, so it gave and I have one son, So it gave my wife and myself the flexibility to move around. So we chose to experience a little bit of that. So when COVID came, just after that, we moved to Singapore and we lived there for a few years. My long-term plan is to go back and live in India, but I really wanted to live in Europe for a little bit, right? And that's how we ended up coming to Dublin. Now it's interesting because why Dublin? We didn't want a very large city like London. We wanted to experience something a little different, and we already had business in Dublin. And it so happened that we did acquire an Irish business a year ago. It was not really the reason for me to be here. It didn't require to me be, it, for me to be here, but I just took it as an excuse. So yeah, so that's how here in Dublin.
Okay, so take me back to the start of the business. What was the kind of initial idea and kind of why did you start the business?
Okay, so basically, I think the reason we started the business is because we just wanted to start a business, right? I mean, really, I think I was quite young when we started the business, and really, my partner and myself kind of go way back. And we started our first business when I was in my second year of college, bachelor's, right? And we did some part-time business back then. We ended up doing three small businesses 3 years of our college, on my second year, third year, and fourth year. And
God. It's okay,
and
sorry.
the time we graduated, we said this is what we need to do for a living, right? But then I ended up going to the US to do my master's. But we stayed in touch, and we really wanted to start some business. And frankly, we started the business just after I graduated from did my master's in the US. I spent a few years working, and then we started the business right after. And literally, I had about 3 years of experience and no idea what we were going to do. But I think the fundamental driving factor was, hey, we need to get something going on our own. That was the root of it, and that's how we started it.
You did industrial engineering
That's right.
in college, and then I suppose you're in IT consulting now.
That's right. That's
Um,
right.
were you always looking at something in IT consulting that you wanted to do, or and do the worlds kind of overlap?
No, I mean, I think see, I did industrial engineering. Just to give some context, I did mechanical engineering in India as an undergrad. And frankly, I wanted to do mechanical. I got into it and then I just hated it. Seriously, I didn't like it that much. I mean, I really wanted to do, but I didn't like it. Now, the only course I liked in that entire mechanical engineering classes was industrial engineering. So I picked to do that for my master's. That was better. I just didn't know that I can do software engineering by going to the US. But when I ended up in the US, I found out that I had the flexibility to take a lot of classes. And ended up taking whatever is required for industrial engineering, but I studied a lot of software engineering classes, whatever you can think of, right? Just out of interest, just out of passion. Um, and that's how I got my interest in software. But having said that, once I graduated, obviously I had an industrial engineering degree. I ended up getting a job in manufacturing. So my 3 years of work experience was in manufacturing and production planning, not in software. But I was doing software on the side. I, you know,
And it is a little bit like manufacturing in a way, because you're kind of, in a way, you're manufacturing systems, right? Ultimately, there's an output at the end. So what was it like? So day one, yourself and your business partner, was it just the two of you in a room, or did you have startup capital, or what did that look like?
No, I think it was actually more than two of us when we originally started the business. And you need to remember, my partner and myself were in touch, and we wanted to kick something off. But it took a lot more than that. So along the way, when I was doing my masters, I met some friends, and then at work for 3 years, I met some friends, and this interest of doing a business was always there. I ended up talking to everybody, and then when we actually started the business, it was actually 7 people. It wasn't two. We ended up pulling in people that we know into the business. So actually, the business was started by 7 people, including myself and my partner. Um, and we were all just trying to figure out what to do, in a sense. It's another story that very soon, after a few years, the seven became much smaller because the initial years were extremely challenging, and then people left, and All those things happened, and finally the core team. And then there was a new individual who joined us. After 2 3 years, we treat him as a co-founder. So in a sense, there were 8 people, but eventually it kind of dwindled down to 3, right? Because first few years were very hard. There was no startup capital. Um, you know, we are a bunch of guys just trying to figure things out. There wasn't there wasn't a business plan or anything like that. So it was quite challenging, and people kind of left and did their own thing. So it came down to a 3 people team, and we stuck it out. I mean, it took us 5 6 years to get to some level of profitability. We ended up with a lot of credit card debt and so on. But thankfully, things turned around, and 6 7 years into the business, I think things started going in the right way.
What was it that it was mainly kind of you guys, the seven of you, doing the work, and let's go find a customer and see can we build something for them? Was that kind of what it looked like in the start?
At the start, that's what it looked like. Um, but a couple of years into it, we started hiring some people in India. Right, it was not very high cost to hire, so we started hiring. But fundamentally, it was the 7 of us trying to do things. But then that 7, as I told you, because we didn't have too much success, we didn't have too much money coming in, so that started coming down. People started going in, working part time on the business and doing full time to make some living and so on. So it started coming down.
And were the customers at that stage, in the very early days, were they in the US at that time?
So basically, the business didn't start off as a software engineering business, right? The business actually started off as an industrial engineering company.
Okay.
Yeah. So because obviously, like I said, my background is industrial engineering, and I did one class in. I went to Texas A&M. I did a class called computer simulation. What that means is you could model a manufacturing floor on your system. You could make some changes on the manufacturing floor and see if productivity improves, throughput improves. Or you could do the same for a restaurant operation, queuing system in restaurants. So there's a software to do that. And I love that software, right? So when we're looking for business ideas, and my partner and myself, we're always talking what to do. I mean, we explored all kinds of things, all the way from exporting buttons to
Yes.
uh, pumps to various kind of things. So we're always brainstorming something, but I like this. So I reached out to this company and I asked them, can we be your reseller, right? And they said, sure, why not? So we got resale rights for that product in parts of US and parts of, and in India. So that's how we started. We started reselling that product and consulting on that product. So that was the initial business. It was an industrial engineering consulting simulation firm. We were just out of my interest, I was doing a little bit of software projects as well. Just that interest from my college continued. But the business was actually a computer simulation company, right? And we did that for several years. The challenge was that the work was fantastic. We were able to get good customers, even companies like Boeing ended up being customers. But the problem was it wasn't growing. It was a very niche business. It was technically interesting, but the business was not growing. But interestingly, the software engineering piece that we were doing in a little bit of a semi part time kind of a mode, that turned out to be a lot more, seeing a lot more traction. So, few years into it, we made a fairly difficult call to just sunset the industrial engineering part of the business and focus completely on software. And that's really, I think, is a turning point for us. And we started kind of growing from there.
What kind of time was this, Gary?
So it's a long time, right? I mean, we have we're not today. You hear startups growing from start to fairly large scale in 7 years, 8 years, etc. I mean, for us, of course, time was on our side. We were young. We didn't have too many expenses, etc. But it took us, from the start of the business, it took us about 7 years to get to profitability, and we shut down the industrial engineering business probably after 5 years into it. So I started the business in the mid to late 90s. 2002, 2003 is when we become like a full-fledged software engineering firm. And within software engineering, again, that was becoming a competitive sector. We started focusing on what we call as product engineering. What that means is we worked with companies in the US to help build their products. So we became an extended engineering team for them. And that is today our core business. And it gave us a lot of strength because when you're working with a product company to build their product, you learn a lot, right? And when you're working with 10 different product companies, you learn 10 times as much, and you're able to see what works well, what doesn't work well, and so on. We started getting expertise of what it takes to build high quality software that's scalable, that has great user experience, that has good architecture, and so on and so forth.
You
So,
you mentioned there that the first few years were very difficult and very challenging.
right.
And you gave some sense of why that was. But could you kind of just talk a little bit about that time, and really what the challenges were, and I suppose why people decided to leave along the way?
Yeah, well, first, I think I mean the people that we're working with were all quite experienced, quite senior, and everybody has expenses to take care of. We didn't have enough revenues coming in to support everybody, so it was very natural that people took this building this business as a part time because they had to focus elsewhere. But but for me and my partner, we didn't have any other. I wouldn't say not that we didn't have options. I could have obviously got a job, but given the fun that we had doing that part-time business when we were in college for 3 years, we were extremely clear this is what we wanted to do for a living. It wasn't even an alternative to think, hey, we need to do something different. This is difficult. We need to do something different. We didn't think that way. We just kept at it. In retrospect, you could say, I don't know, somebody else would have. Maybe it was not the logical choice to continue with it because it took a long time to pay off. But we didn't want to do anything else. We just wanted to build a business, and we just made mistakes. And but for some of the other partners, they maybe they didn't want to stick on with it, so they kind of moved on, which is very understandable. I mean, I'm very good friends with all of them even today, right? But for us, we were young as well. We were not married. We didn't have too many bills to pay. Um, India is not a very expensive place to live in some senses. So we just kept at it. I think persistence, I would say, is a lesson that I still take away today, right, from that.
And did it? I suppose once you hit a certain size, because and sorry, just to go back here, like what I'm thinking about is you started this business with 7 people, and it's kind of there's challenges in the early days. Of course, you get to profitability after 6 years, but today you're a 200 million turnover company with 4,500 people. So it has paid off, if you like, in spectacular fashion. Did you have your eyes on something really big, um, into the future when you started the business? Was this kind of part of your dream or your aspiration, say?
I think I still remember, and I like I said, a lot of times we don't know what we're doing, right? And sometimes even today that's true. That's probably even truer in the earlier days. And I still remember one of my partners is from Argentina, and I was visiting Argentina, Buenos Aires, and he was one I met in my masters in the US. And we had a whiteboard, and we were just kind of drawing, and we put up a thing that said we want to be $1 billion company. Right? I don't even know how many zeros probably a billion had, but so we always had that vision that we need to become a larger firm, right? Um, I think that's always been there, and I would say for us, um, it is a passion to build something, right? It's not so much what is the payoff that we get from this. It's just a passion to want to build something, and that I would say that still remains, right? We're not looking necessarily for an end goal. In fact, if my personal aspiration is to leave something for the longer term, right? Build something. I mean, I'm very inspired, frankly. I don't know if you might have heard Tata Group from India, which is started 150 years ago. Tata Sons, and a lot of their businesses are really global. It's one of the largest groups in the world. Phenomenal story. Started 150 years ago. A lot of their income goes towards charitable activities, and that kind of longevity over a period of time. For example, many people don't know, but Jaguar Land Rover is owned by Tata today, right? So that those are the kind of stories that inspire me, and see if there's a way to do something like that. So it's not about build something, exit, right? It's
Did you have that? in mind when you started? This kind of long-term view and the feeling that you kind of wanted to leave something behind. Was that something you've always had?
And I wouldn't say that was at the starting point. No, no, I think that kind of came along the way, because we obviously in a business like this, we're doing quite well. There's always offers to get more funding or investment, exit. All those options came along. At some point in time, we were entertaining all those. Now we don't too much look at that. Um, so when those things happen and we started thinking through what we want to do, right? You could always say, okay, we built something, we sold it, we made some, good returns, etc. And then you kind of go and do something else. Um, what's the point, right? If you're going to do something else, might as well continue, because to me, the hardest part is building the foundation, right? If you have that, why would you give it away and try to restart again? I mean, I'm not saying that's a right approach for everybody. I'm even not sure that's a right approach for us. Right.
Yeah.
But it just seems like when we have worked hard to build a foundation, um, maybe it's easier to go from one to two than it is to go from zero to one. So why not we keep it going and continue to build on it? It's just a thought that has come along the way. And then when we think of the long term, why are we doing all this, right? I think if there can be a social intent behind what we're doing, I think that's fantastic.
Tell me about the growth, kind of tactically. From it's a long enough time period, right? But did you kind of take in funding along the way, or did you grow organically? Was it we'll get a client and then we'll fill with people? What way or what were the kind of key drivers of the growth along the way?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So we don't have any external funding. We're not taken any external funding. So it's a completely bootstrap business. Having said that, we do rely on bank loans a lot. So instead of using equity funding, we do use debt funding to fuel our growth, right? But if you look at the business, it's quite a while now, 25, 30 years now. So it's a work of a lifetime in a sense, right? The first, as I told you, the first 5 7 years, let's say from the mid 90s, and I don't even have an exact start date for the business.
Yes.
So that kind of like from the mid 90s, 96, 97 kind of a time frame to 2002, 2003 kind of time frame, we probably grew from zero to $500,000, right? And as I told you, when we came into 2002, 2003 is when we started seeing some glimmers of profitability. Once we changed over from being an industrial engineering company to a software engineering company, that's when we started seeing some traction. So from 2002 is when we started seeing growth. 2002 or 3 is when we started seeing growth. And uh, 2012, let's say 10-year period, right? We grew from about a 500,000 to about somewhere in the range of 10 to 15 million, right? In that time frame. So it took us about, a 10-year period to go from 500,000 to say 15-ish kind of a thing. That was a fantastic period because we were acquiring customers. We had pivoted to this thing within software engineering that we call as product engineering. We came up with a methodology called producteering to build high quality software products better, faster, etc. And that started winning us a lot of customers. Profitability was good, so we were able to reinvest into the business. Frankly, we didn't even have good finance systems and things of that nature, but we were making money. We were reinvesting into the business and so on. Um, so that actually worked quite well. And in that period, we had some offers to raise funding. Twice we went very close to raising funding. Twice we had term sheets, we had diligence, everything going on for various reasons. It didn't fully go through. And 2007-8 time frame I'm talking, the financial crisis time frame, it didn't fully go through. And that was the only time we entertained that. Post that, we have not gone that path. So when it came to and so that was a good period where we were growing and we were adding customers. A lot of companies tend to get to that $8 10 million and then tend to kind of be there or maybe exit at that time, etc. I guess in some senses we were lucky. We started doing some M&A at that time. And 2012 13 from the 10, 15 million, 2019, we get, we somewhere along the way, 2015, 16, we set a goal called Mission 100. That is to reach $100 million in revenue. We reached that in 2019. And in 2019, we set a goal called Mission 200.10. We're close to 200. We're not fully there, but we're almost there. It's taken longer than I thought. Actually, the journey from 15, 10, 15 to 100 was, in retrospect, quite quick. The journey from 100 to 200 has been more challenging.
And why is that? Are there less larger acquisitions that you can make, or what?
What's basically happening is that at every level, the company has to change, right? I think at the level we are, we need to be able to win lot larger customers to drive our growth. And when you try to do that, you end up in competing with the large global companies, SIs, like an Accenture or a Capgemini, or some of the large Indian SIs like Infosys or Atos, etc. So you hit that, you're suddenly competing with them in Fortune 500 accounts, and that requires a completely different skill set to win. And it's taken us some time to, let's say, figure out all that. I think so far you need a lot clearer strategy, how to win against those guys. Why should a customer trust you? So it's taken us some time to figure all that out. I think it's a natural, it's taken longer, but I think it's natural that as every business grows, it kind of reaches a plateau, and you have to do things differently to grow from there. We're having to work through some of that as we, as we try to grow. And then the market, the last 5, 6 years, as you know, I think there's been some big incidents in the market and at all times.
Are those moments, those kind of um, big moments, say, I'll use the word existential, but I suppose I don't know if I mean existential, but the difficult periods. Um, how do those feel personally for you as you go? And I'm kind of, the reason I'm asking is because I think that a lot of people that don't have a business your size, myself included, I might be taken by um the opinion or the belief that, oh well, once I get to a certain size of business, I'm not going to have any problems, and it's kind of like, it kind of keeps you going almost to get there. So maybe you could talk about some of those problems that you
Yeah,
faced.
no, I think of this frankly, I always think of business as a rat race, frankly. I mean, there is no end point, right? There is no place you can get to that you can say I've reached, in my opinion, right? There's nothing like that, because the external environment is changing all the time. Competitors are changing all the time. So there's no room to, in my opinion, relax, right? If you are in it, let's be ready to run, because it's not like, okay, we reached here. I mean, there could be some businesses that have very strong moats, in a sense, that can relax. But then for our business, which is in a very competitive industry, it's like run, run, run all the time. So we have to be ready to do that, right? I mean, exactly now is such a moment with AI and what it's going to do to services and what it's going to do to software is a huge. I mean, I feel the angst, in a sense, as to how is this going to disrupt our industry, right? Because it's one of the biggest moments, in my opinion, we are encountering right now. And whether we can survive and get to the other side and do well is still an open question. Those risks are there. It's just that we, you know, all we can do is to put our best foot forward, is to try to do the things that we need to do and be willing to change, right? It cannot be that we do the same thing and we can get to the other side. But those moments always happen, and especially now, and maybe because age is also catching up with me, feel it even more, right? As to, how do we survive and thrive through this moment, and time will only tell. And those risks are absolutely there, and we have to navigate them.
What about the angst you mentioned around AI? How are you thinking about AI? What are the things that have kind of come out that have scared you most, if you like? And how are you thinking about it?
Yeah, well, it's a huge change. I mean, we've gone through changes before. We've gone through the introduction of the internet, the mobile, and social media, and all of that. But this one feels very different, right? And because it can disrupt a lot of industries at once, and we need to see how it happens. And obviously, it'll disrupt our industry. Software services, technology services has been primarily a time and material game, right? We bill based on time spent. And suddenly, if you think, to do a particular piece of work, you don't need X, you need 0.5x of time. Then obviously that means revenue shrinkage can happen, right? And things can get more different, which is good broadly. And so it is a threat and an opportunity. The threat is AI can do things more efficiently. We are on a time and material, primarily a time and material kind of a billing model, like a law firm or a professional services firm. We are the same, so there is a risk to that. But having said that, my theory is that there are a lot of positives as well, possibly. One is large enterprises, in my opinion, it's not like they're just going to, it's not about building small pieces of software. You are changing an organization. I mean, huge businesses run on software and you cannot take risks. So you need the help of people like us to actually build agentic AI and make processes more efficient for our customers. So there is an opportunity there for sure to do things differently. The second thing is there is a lot of old legacy software and they need to be modernized. I mean, just one statistic says, people think COBOL is dead in the 60s, but there is 300 billion lines of COBOL code that run today and they need to be modernized. And with AI, that modernization becomes less risky. So there is an opportunity that opens up over there. Now, the third opportunity, you can think of it, and if you're tracking the news, you would see there is a lot of concern that licensed software itself is not needed because you can simply use AI to build your software. So licensed software will go away, which I think is quite far-fetched, right? I think maybe some licensed software will go away. But if licensed software goes away, then you need to build software to run your business. And we have a role to play there, right? So sure, you can use AI to build a small piece of code for an SME, but to run a global enterprise, you still need properly structured software that pulls in requirements for all users. And if we are going to build custom software and replace licensed software, there's an opportunity there for us as well. So there are opportunities, but there are threats also. It's just how do we navigate those? How do we stay on top of it? And things are moving at such a rapid pace. So it's going to be interesting. So I'm not only all negative, but there is a lot of anxiety for sure, right? And I don't think it's just myself.
I don't think so. No, no. And actually, it's interesting because um, I felt when a few weeks back when a lot of the SaaS, the Salesforce and these types of companies, their price dropped, and the reason that it was in the media for this price drop was that, well, in the future people are going to be able to build their own, so why would we need. And you said far-fetched. Like, I was like, "What? Why would you build your own? Like, it's already there, and you have everything on there." And I actually thought, well, I obviously don't understand, this area and what's going. But now that you said that, I feel a little bit vindicated in my opinion of that. A lot of that stuff isn't necessarily going away.
At least not overnight, right?
Yes, of course, of course.
But things are changing. I mean, I like this Bill Gates quote, right? I think it's Bill Gates who says, we overestimate the amount of change that happens in 2 years. We underestimate the amount of change that can happen in 10 years. And there is obviously change coming. Maybe we are overestimating what will happen in 2 years, but things are changing for sure. And yeah.
I noticed in one of the documents or one of the news clippings I was reading about you in preparation for this, you had taken over a company in New Zealand, I believe, relatively recently, and there was a quote from you, which I'm assuming is true, which you'll tell me otherwise, that you were looking for a company that would have kind of quality built into the culture, and you're an engineer, right? And you're obviously mathematical and systems driven, and your company builds systems. And then there's this understanding or opinion that culture was the most important thing in buying this company, rather than. I'm sure there was technical aspects that were important too, but that you hadn't actually mentioned that. And I'm wondering, um, how did your understanding of that evolve over time, and why is culture so important to you?
I mean, I think it's extremely important, right? I mean, I would say culture, and one level higher to that is people. I mean, our business is extremely people centric, right? We have a number of global customers, and to do good work for them, we need good teams that can do that work, right? It's not that I or any one of the leaders can be there taking care of all those projects that are happening. So the ownership has to rest with the team that works with the customer, and our only job is to see, as people that run the company, is to see how we can bring in the right talent, how we can make Aspire as a place where they feel motivated, and feel like they can learn and grow. So our job is to have an environment where we can hire the right talent, where we can groom them, where we can nurture them, and where we can give them the aspiration to stay long term. That's the only thing that we can do. And if we do that, then the rest of it, projects and everything, takes care of itself, right? Because there's so much technical capability that we need in the company across different areas, that you need high quality people who can focus on those technologies. And so you need to give them that feeling that they're in a place where they can learn, grow, contribute, and have the freedom to operate and so on. And so that's where culture comes in, to have that kind of a culture.
And
So
how do you bring a culture into, because the organization is so big now, how do you kind of I don't know, remind people, or how do you train people, or how do you look for people that align with your culture?
I think we've been lucky enough that a lot of the leaders within the company have grown with us. Of course, we have a long history, like I told you, 25 plus years. A lot of our leaders have been with us for a period of time, and they've seen this journey firsthand, how we built it step by step, and so on. So I mean, I'm thankful. I'm really, the one thing I'm really thankful for is the people that we get to work with every day, right? Without that, I think we wouldn't be anything. And those people have. The leaders have grown with us, and they then impart the culture to the next levels in terms of how they behave. They then talk. So I think it's by osmosis, right? It's very hard to just put up a culture statement and hope that it happens. We do talk about those things when people join in. One of our culture statements is called open and frank exchange of thoughts, right? The entire culture statement is called Orbit for us. The first O stands for open and frank exchange of thoughts. And to me, that's extremely critical. So whenever I get to meet people, I tell them, what we want from you is, you please tell us what's working, what's not working. If you come in with experience from elsewhere, tell us what you've seen. If you're a fresh engineer joining from campus, even, you will have a very different perspective. If you see something wrong, please share with us, right? Because I always believe and that the only way we have grown the company is by listening to people and what the problems are, listening to customers and seeing what their challenges are, and then seeing what we can do to fix those. I mean, obviously, not every problem is fixable, but if I keep hearing something repeated, then we know there is a problem. And so we encourage that open and frank exchange of thoughts, and we try to be as much non-hierarchical as possible. And if you can um, let that views emerge, and if you can have an open mind to listen and make some action on that, I think everything will work well. I mean, because we don't know what's required to be done, right? If you just get that input, because people are close to the ground, they're close to customers, they'll have a lot more perspective on what's required to be done.
Did you see the documentary, the Netflix documentary on the Boeing 737 Max? And it was a plane that they had built, and it was crashing. You're probably aware of it, but they showed that essentially what you're talking about there was the reason for this crash. So they had a kind of a shoot the messenger culture. So if someone from below said, "I don't think this is right," their manager would say, "You don't know what you're talking about," and fire that person or whatever. I think that's an extreme example, but it really brought home that point of culture and how important it is in an organization, and exactly what you've mentioned there. If you don't have if you have an open and people can be frank and honest about the issues, they it makes the organization better
Yeah,
ultimately.
100%. It's hard to listen to that feedback sometimes, right? It's truly sometimes hard, but if we can do that and we can stay open, and yeah, we can get a little bit defensive about that feedback. I do get defensive all the time, but then if you start hearing that a little bit more, you say maybe there is really something there, right? Maybe something I really should do something about that, right? Because if one person tells you it's one thing, But if you start seeing it elsewhere, but for that, like you said, you need to have that openness that with people can talk about those things, because if so we want to have that kind of a thing, and to me that's fundamental. That's why the O is at the beginning, the open and frank exchange of thoughts. And to me it's very important that we continue to maintain that, and as long as we listen and take action, we'll be good, I think.
For you personally, how has this journey been? Because you mentioned, business is a rat race and it's kind of,
All right.
never stops, and we better be ready
That's
to
right.
run.
That's right.
Has it been difficult for you to kind of avoid burnout over the years, or to not put too much of yourself into something, or has that been an issue at all over time?
Sometimes it's challenging, right? But for the most part, I do get excited thinking about what are the things we can do and how it can work out well, right? So when I'm a little bit down, not just when I'm down, but when the mind goes towards, okay, these are all good things we can do, then I get more excited. So that's how it actually works. There is obviously a lot of moments when, when maybe the revenue goes down from one of our larger customers, or sales is not working as well, or when somebody very important, I mean, somebody says, I want to leave, then I take it personally. Right? um, so those are hard moments, but nonetheless, keep thinking about, okay, we're doing A, B, C, and that could lead to good outcomes. Then you get more excited by it, and more importantly, there is also the longer term thing that, hey, we really want to build something and leave something for the long term, um, and so that keeps me, in a sense, that keeps me going.
And what about your personal, I suppose, health, and your management and your kind of day to day? Do you do anything kind of intentional for that?
Yeah. So basically, I am. It doesn't look like it, but I do go to the gym.
Well, that's why I was asking, because you seem very healthy, and it's not always the case with someone who has been involved in a business for this amount of time and running it, and the kind of growth spurt that you've been on pretty much since the start. And you just mentioned rat race, and that kind of sounds very sort of stressful. And even if it's exciting, there's a danger, for me anyway, if I'm excited about something, that I could just, to the detriment of everything else in my life, I can sort of focus on that. And I'm just kind of wondering how you've managed that.
Yeah, so basically a couple of things. One is I do go to the gym 3 to 4 times a week. So and I find that when I go there and I do some activities, nothing very intense or anything like that, it refreshes the mind, right? I mean, that is when I start thinking about the initiatives or the positives, right? So it actually helps me. I don't know, maybe there's something. I'm sure there's something scientific behind it, about some chemicals being released, etc.
Yeah.
So that actually seems to help, for sure, right? The other thing is to really recognize that this is what business is, right? And there's no point in getting way too stressed about it. At some point, you recognize there'll be ups and there'll be downs, and you get good news and bad news on the same day. It's all part of the thing. Having said that, it's still difficult to digest the bad news, but still, it sometimes gets compensated by a new customer win, for example, that we are looking forward to, right? Lately, we have had a few of those, so I'm happy. So uh, we just have to say that even the largest companies in the world, they cannot stand still, right? They, we have to recognize that, right? I mean, even a Microsoft, right, for all its power, there's always a fear of disruption, right? So even when those companies have to keep running, we have to do the same. So we just have to recognize that that's the nature of business, right? If you want to be in it, you have to accept it. There is no way to go away from it. So that's part of it. Let that part just keep going. And we do want to make sure that spend time with family, make sure there's some savings in case things really go south, which I hope it doesn't, but there's at least something put away, for example. Those are important as well, just for sanity of the mind.
I met you through the entrepreneurs organization here in Ireland, and I was wondering, when did you join entrepreneurs organization? I suppose you probably joined in India, and why did you join, and how's it helped you?
Well, I did join EO in India, and frankly, it's been phenomenal for me personally, right? And I've been in EO Chennai, for, I don't know, 17, 18 years right now. So I joined probably 2007 or 8, and I've been in a forum in Chennai for the same amount of time, 17, 18 years, and my forum members haven't changed in that time, and we have grown together, and it's a fantastic support network. I mean, there are, whenever, every month, obviously, we have our forum meetings where we share. I'm very inspired by some of my forum mates, some of whom run really large businesses, kind of seeing their ambition, and we get inspired by that. And a very great set of guys who are motivated in us, each of us succeeding as well. And that's why when I moved to Singapore, I joined EO Singapore as well. Right. And continue to be in EO India or Chennai and CS Singapore. And of course, few years later, when I moved from Singapore to Ireland, I joined EO Ireland, because that experience of being in EO, the forum experience, meeting the members, the learning events, just bouncing board, assistance, anything that we want. Hey, I'm looking for help in my business in ABC. There's always somebody ready to help you. It's a fantastic, I mean, it's a fantastic, in my view, fantastic organization. And I have grown a lot because of you.
Can you think of an example of kind of one example maybe of for you personally, like how you might have grown from joining the organization?
There are concrete examples of where I got help from members when I'm in a tough spot, etc. But in terms of growth, to me, it's more about inspiration. It is also more about when I have specific problems, when I go and do a presentation, or a deep dive to my forum, there's always answers. Like recently, I was talking about some charitable endeavors that we want to do. I had some particular thoughts. I went to them, and very different perspectives came, because of which we have changed what we want to do, and whatever inputs I got were very meaningful. So many instances like that. Whenever I'm not able to have a clear thought in terms of what we want to do, I go to the forum and do a presentation, or I might ping anybody in the entire EO group, who's a specialist in that, and talk to them. Sometimes I've talked to people about fundraising for debt, for acquisitions. I've talked to people about sometimes problems that we encounter with a particular bank who is not helping us. There's always somebody who has some connections or the other. They come and help us out, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned your the charitable organizations that you're involved with, and I want to talk about those in a minute. I have two other things to ask you about. Right, the first is angel investing, and the second is that you're an amateur pilot. So I want to, can we look at angel investing first? Because I suppose it's a little bit business related. Um, how is that kind of evolved, and why did you start doing that?
Well, I think the reason I started doing that is fundamentally to know what is happening new, right? I mean, because things are evolving so fast, and you have young entrepreneurs coming all the time, and they think about things very differently. So my fundamental motivation was to, one, to help them to fund, to do some funding, etc. But also there is an intent of learning as well, right? And curiosity as to what new things are happening, how people are thinking about things differently. And that's the reason I got involved in angel
And
investing.
have you come across anything where you've said, "Wow, that I hadn't been thinking about this area at all"? Has there anyone come to you with a kind of a something maybe related to your industry or adjacent to it in some way, that you kind of thought, "Wow, that's a real different way to think about it."
Well, I wouldn't. I actually, maybe I'm not spending enough time on it, or maybe I'm not in the right circles. If I were in the Silicon Valley angel investing circles, maybe I'll see more of that. But I wouldn't. I'm very inspired and motivated by by what people are coming up with, and the passion they exhibit. But I wouldn't say nothing has been like so groundbreaking or different. It all leads to our thesis of the world, what AI can do, what new technologies can do. I wouldn't say it's something like totally. I've not seen anything like that.
What about India, right? Because I think I've never been to India.
I hope you get to
I,
visit.
w- I
We'd
would
love
love
to.
to. I
Yeah,
would love to go. Right, and
yeah.
it is it is
You
on
have
the
an open
list.
invitation.
It's
You
just
should.
so big. Well, thank you very much. That's good. Well, that's great. At least I have that, right?
Absolutely.
And it's just so big that I always think there's so many different areas. But it's definitely on the list. But the more I kind of read about it, and if it's to be kind of believed, what's in the media generally at the moment, is that it's kind of an exciting place to be, especially from a business point of view at this time. And it's kind of it's probably unfair to call it an emerging market at this stage, because it's just such a big, and there's, there's huge companies that have come out of India in the last number of years. Tell me a little bit about India and kind of what's exciting about it
I
now.
think it's extremely exciting. I'm very excited about where we are as a country. There are a lot of problems, of course, but I'm extremely excited um, because there's so many opportunities. The country is growing. The middle class is becoming larger. The people have a lot of global exposure right now. Um, and the government is doing certain right things, and the world is becoming multipolar, and we are staying neutral in a way between all of them. Yeah, and there is good technology talent that emerges out of universities in India. I also think the country is formalizing. What that means is we've had a very informal economy, a lot of cash kind of a thing. Many of the businesses are very small. They're not formal. They don't file with the government. They're not even registered with the government. They're like small entrepreneurs that run their shops. Now it's changing. You're having big chains coming in. All parts of India are growing. I think it's extremely exciting, and I'm very hopeful for the next 20, 30 years about what can happen over there. This formalization of the economy, which is things moving from informal economy to the formal economy, will increase the tax base of the government. We are already seeing that. And that in turn provides a government more avenues to invest in the economy. And then it creates that nice kind of a virtuous circle, right? So we are kind of at that spot where that can kick in. Just to give an example, right? Even today in India, we don't have big restaurant chains for a country like us. Ironically, in a country like India, which has a lot of ethnic food, the biggest restaurant chains are McDonald's and Domino's. You don't have a local Indian restaurant chain that is of the same scale. Like restaurants and Domino's has probably 2,000 outlets in India. You couldn't name an Indian restaurant chain like that. But that possibility is now emerging. And that's going to drive that wave of consumer related growth. Right? Because what you have in India, you will have thousands of restaurants, but they're all mom and pop shops that are informal. There's no chain, no major chains, right? I think those things, that consumerization, formalization of the consumer economy is happening, and which will increase the tax base of the government, which gives the government the power to spend. And I think so many interesting.
Why do you think is it that, I know you've talked about formalization, but um, for example, I have a lot of colleagues in the Philippines, and they have a fast food chain called Jollibee, which is now in London. I was in New York there last year, and I saw, they have a Jollibee there in New York. So that's a kind of a big chain that's kind of grown out of that. So why kind of has that not happened in India in a way?
I think first of all, India is one country, but there are like 30 different states with so many different languages. So that part is there, right? It's very, very different. Each market is a little bit different. I'm not saying it's not happened at all. We are seeing a lot more of that happen now. Why has it? Why has it not happened? Well, the country is really big. The spending power of people has been lower. We think of India as 1.4 billion people, right? But then the people who have middle class income is like 100 million or 150 million. Now, so far that's been a much lower number until 10 years ago. But that number is now going northward, because you have IT services like our companies servicing the Western market. So you have more funds coming in, US companies and other companies coming up and setting their own centers in India. So there's been more income coming in. So the middle class is growing. As the middle class grows, you have the opportunity to create these kind of brands. I think that's a real reason, right? So far, the spending power has been very low. I mean, while country has 1.4 billion, the per capita income, even today, the average income of an Indian is like $3,000 a year, right? So it doesn't, and that's an average. and you have a lot of them well below that, and of course some of them above that. So there hasn't been enough spending power. But gradually the economy has grown, you have that spending power coming in, and that allows the creation of such kind of brands. That's,
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. And even as you were talking, I was thinking, uh, Bill Gates had said a number of years ago that he'd prefer to hire people from Indian Institute of Technology from a technical standpoint rather than Harvard or any of the other kind of big universities in the US, which is an amazing thing to say,
well,
really.
there is a reason for that. I mean, that is because there's so many people, and the people that can get into it is like 0.000, I don't know what, 0.001%, or I don't quote me on it, but some very small number. Harvard has a 10% admission ratio, or a 7 or 10%. Now IIT, Indian Institute of Technology, has a less than 1%. So you have the best of the breed already going there. It's natural that the people that come out of it are going to be extremely good, right?
And do you know if is it mostly people like Indian people coming and or do you get people from all over the world coming?
No, mostly for people from India. I mean, there might be a small portion from elsewhere, but it's mostly people from India. And it's extremely hard to get into it. And you need to be extremely sharp and bright to get into it. So obviously you're going to learn, you go there, you learn good things, you come out. Even if you don't learn, you're probably already very good. So
That's great. And I actually looked up when I saw the university you went to on LinkedIn. I was like, is this an
no,
IIT? And
it's
it's
not.
not. But they said it was a very good university. But,
Well,
I
it's
just
an,
wanted to
yeah,
get a yes,
yeah. I'm
yeah,
very proud of it, but no, it's far
yes.
from an IIT.
Okay, yeah. So tell me about. So you're an amateur pilot. Tell me about that. When did you get
Yeah,
into
well,
it?
that's a long time ago, Connor. I wish I could claim that now. Maybe I should remove that from my description. But
No, I
yeah,
will.
but it's always nice to put that in, right? Yeah,
Oh,
no,
once a
this was in the
pilot.
late 90s when I lived in the US, and mid 90s when I lived in the US. I just wanted to do something different. I went to a local flying school there. It was not very expensive. I got a student's pilot's license, and it's long expired. It's just that I used to fly two-seater and four-seater Cessna aircraft under visual flying. So I'm not an instrument flying. I mean, for instrument flying is where you can fly planes without even looking outside. Visual flying is where you had to have a uh, visibility of the horizon. So I just did visual flying. Um, and two and four-seater aircraft, and I did that for a period of time, and then I moved back to India, and since I have not picked it up, I keep saying I want to pick it up, but time has gone by.
Well, it's for me. What I thought about it was I thought, oh yeah, Gowri, um, a technical person, and he's an engineer and all of that, and that makes sense from flying because there's a bit of engineering in it, obviously, uh, from what I know, which is very little. But I also thought there's a bit of risk appetite there, because it's probably not the safest pastime in the world, and I thought. I just there's a bit of risk appetite.
Right. No, you could very well say that. I'm not, I'm, I, my wife is not at all happy that I, take risks. And even today, when we go out on, let's say I want to do something adventurous, she says, no, 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 you can't. So I do have that bit of a risk appetite thing. And just to give you some context, when I graduated from my undergrad, in mechanical engineering, I had applied to the Indian Air Force and I got selected. I didn't join, obviously, because it required you to have a 7-year commitment of working. But the reason I didn't join is I got selected for maintaining aircraft, not for not for flying aircraft. Maybe I would have joined if they picked me for flying an aircraft. It's a fairly intensive process to get into it, so I went through that selection exercise. And so I've always had that bit of I want to fly kind of a thing.
Yeah,
So when the
yeah.
opportunity presented and I found it's not too expensive, back then it wasn't too expensive in the US to do it. I had an instructor, a flying school near where I live, just went and got into it. But yes, it's part of the risk taking kind of it.
Tell me about your charitable work and the organizations you're involved with. I did write them down here. So the Polestar Foundation and the Pearl Tree Foundation. What do they do, and why is this so meaningful to you?
Well, when I think about the long term, as I told you, I'm really motivated by that, and I'm motivated by the example of Tata Sons, right? Tata Group most of the ownership of most of the ownership of Tata Group is with a set of charitable organizations. Of course, most of the funds get reinvested into the business, into different businesses that they have built over a period of time. But there's a particular amount of dividends or whatever gets upstream to the charitable foundations for them to do a lot of work around India and maybe even around the globe. I think that's a great model to build a business for the long term, right? I want to do the same, and at least a part of our ownership over a period of time. I would like the outcome of that to benefit charitable activities, and that's kind of how we have set things up. And Pearl Tree Foundation is the foundation we are building out that does a lot of um, the charitable activities, right? Today the main focus of the foundation is on skill development. As I said, India is still a poor economy. There are a lot of people who still look for jobs. They don't have education. The approach we have taken is that if you are able to equip an individual with particular skill and get them a job in the formal economy, it will help them build a good life, and that is the focus that we have today. And it's better than just handing out cash. If you can train the individual, it's like one of those sayings, right? You teach a man to fish and don't give him just fish, right? It's equal to that if you can give him the skills. So the big skill development is a key focus area, because it can produce that outcome, but also because it's quick and meaningful. So we do run a lot of courses. So far, we have trained about 3,500 people. We take them through a 10-week course in different skills, like, for example, sewing machine, CNC technician, mobile repair technicians, automotive technicians, general nurse, not general health assistants in hospitals. We run various courses, and we use what is called the National Skill Development Certification from the government. We get them certified within a span of about 10 weeks, and we call employers to come in and hire. So for us, it's full cycle. We will identify the people who need this training. We will do the training. We will get them passing the exam. We will get them the certificate. And for a lot of them, it's the first time they get a certificate in their life, because these are people who might not have clear their 10th standard or high school in India. They might be working in some semi-skilled occupation. So first time they have a certificate, then we call employers to come in, do interviews and get them jobs, right? So it's a full cycle thing and all able to be done within the span of, let's say, 3 months, right? We have trained about 3,500 plus people on that and found employment. Then we stay in touch with them to see how we can help them. And it's just our way of giving back to society. And I want to try to, over a period of time, try to increase activities in this direction and also other directions.
I had heard someone talking about philanthropy a while back, and they had said that the most difficult thing about it is measuring the impact. So as you said there, kind of when you give cash away to, you don't know how it's going to be used. It could just be used on anything. But I suppose here, if someone gets a job and from the skills that they've developed with you, you can directly measure the return to society and to that person really from what they make in that job, and I suppose over their career.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a very, that's a very important outcome. In fact, one of the things I drive our team to say, what is the percentage of placement you have for the class? Right? Because our typical class is about 30 to 40 people, 40 students. And you can see all the data by all the classes that we have conducted in our site, poultryfoundation.org. Right, every class, how many people have gone there, how many people graduated, got their skill, and some people don't clear it, but our job is to get as many of them to clear it as possible. And what percentage of the class do we place, right? And get jobs for. And I always keep pushing them for 90-95%. It's sometimes hard to get there. It could be 80-85%. But we need to get jobs for them in proper industries, right? Now, one of the things we haven't done as good of a job is tracking them after a period of time. After 1 year, after 5 years, 3 years, how are they doing? Right? We are trying to do better on that as well. It's not just about immediate impact, it's about midterm and long term impact. Are they continuing to do well and prosper in their jobs? So we are trying to improve on those kind of things, not just looking at immediate outcomes, but longer term outcomes as well.
And why is it important to you? And it might sound like a kind of stupid question, but why this particular problem, and why giving back? I know you mentioned you're inspired by other companies in India that are doing the same, but for you, Why has giving become important for you?
I guess it's a feeling of fulfillment, right? It's a feeling of doing something meaningful. You can see in our own way we are actually able to give back to society. And I mean, I think I mentioned early on, I'm um, more interested in the activity of building something, not so much in, okay, I don't have, you mentioned flying, but I don't have too many other interests that consume a lot of money. Like I don't have, you know, a yacht or a jet or uh, or for that matter, even too many other activities so for me, this is just about building something. And if you can build an organization, even a business as well as a charitable activity for the long term, and just self-sustaining and growing and making a good impact. It's just a feeling of fulfillment of having built something that can be long lasting, right? So I'm always looking at it from the angle of, can this be long lasting? Can this survive beyond over a period of 100 plus years? And to me, right, Warren Buffett talks about it, it's compounding, right? Um, Getting to 0 to 1 is hard, as I said, but if you can let it compound, right? If you can, why should we think of business as something that must be built and sold? Why cannot it compound over a period of time? Right? For that, of course, the industry, are you able to evolve with the industry is a big question, because industries keep changing. Um, but if you can let a business compound over a period of time, then it can grow larger and become bigger in my view.
Well, especially in a kind of charitable organization in a way, because it's almost like the more that that grows, the kind of the better it becomes, and you almost get there's more likely in a charitable foundation, I think, to compound over time in something like what you're doing, because there's just less risk. Ultimately, there'll always be a way to help
But but
someone.
but I must say one thing, right? For the charitable foundation to grow, it needs funds. And the way we have set it up is that the business has to grow to fund the charitable activities. So it's almost both have to happen. If the business doesn't grow, how do you actually fund those charitable activities? So for us, the idea is that a part of our ownership should go towards funding that. And for that, the business has to continue growing for the charitable activities to keep increasing in scale as well. So I think both are important. Right? So there is a motivation there to then grow the business, even for that sake, right? So that you can create more of an impact that way, if that makes sense.
Gowri Subramanian, thank you so much for coming in. I've really enjoyed, and you said to me before we started, "Oh, I don't really do much of this, so let's see how we go." And it's been from the start, it's been perfect. So thank you so much for
Thank you,
doing it.
Connor. I think you really enjoyed the interaction, and I think you asked some phenomenal question that allows me to think more as well. Thank you.
Gary,
Okay.
see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.